Welcome back, my Pog champs, to another episode of Roundup. I promised that I would do something incredibly cringe as on brand, but we're also back as on brand for Roundup because it's been however many weeks since the last episode. But we're back as always, back in action, thanks to Snowball and Blue microphones, making the show happen as always. I don't know, we've got a kind of weird show. We sort of, like 2 weeks ago, we were like, geez, there's nothing to really talk about. And now all of a sudden, we have a lot to talk about. So we'll just put a little disclaimer here at the very start and just say we're not really going to be talking about anything RMR related because we want to let you know that we've got a special edition of Roundup coming up that's going to be sort of RMR focused. So don't have to worry about that if you are panicking, like, why aren't they talking about the RMR? Because, I get plenty of DMs, every day about this podcast because it's everyone's favorite.
Of course.
And I want to make sure that I get ahead of it so I don't get any cheeky questions like, where was all the RMR? It's coming, guys. Okay, so don't panic. Quick shout outs as well to some overseas happenings that we're going to claim as esports. And that's a quick mention to Magnet Brain, Rowan Crothers, the Paralympian swimmer who won a gold and a silver. And I think, did he win more golds in relay events?
There was 2 golds and a
lots
silver.
of medals, and it was wonderful. Wonderful to see. So massive shout out. Big fan of the show, I'm sure. We're a big fan of him.
It's just so nice seeing the guy that would just constantly tap me with a Krieg on LAN, now just like also being a gold medalist and just good at everything.
Tapping everyone in the pool.
Man's a legend, honestly.
And then I guess, to sort of close out the intro, we've got Taffy joining us for an episode. I know we alluded to it a couple of weeks ago, but, we've had him on the team now for a while, punching out, content, looking after all of like the wonderful things that you can read on the website. But we've actually got you on for some audio, some voice for an episode of Roundup. How are you?
Indeed. Good evening, gentlemen. And yes, a big shout out once again to Magnet Brain. Couldn't happen to a better bloke. He deserves absolutely everything. And great to see him just carve up over in Tokyo. And shit, we've got to shout him a Drake when he comes back to Brizzy. I mean, for sure. Absolutely deserves it. But yes, I wish it was better tidings that brought me to Roundup for this week. Unfortunately, it's been a lot of bad news since the season has resumed, unfortunately.
It has. We've already peaked. It's all down here in this episode, guys. So if
you're here for the positivity, Magnet Brain's done.
Now we're through to just sort of, we've just nosedived, and that's the rest of the episode. It's like, I don't know if we're going to pull up by the end. Stick around, find out. But we're gonna jump into what Snowball is dubbing the Orgpocalypse. We should have a graphic for this, or like, little animation, but like, fuck that.
God, I wish we did.
I wish nuclear explosion, bit of everything.
Like, we've already done the nuke theme in OCCS. I think we can move past that for a little bit. That was
you're not wrong.
The nuke was old news. This is the Orgpocalypse, okay? So yeah, if you've been living, so if you've been living under a rock in terms of where things have been at, this week has not exactly gone as a lot of people would have kind of hoped things would go for where things are looking in AUCS. And at this point, it is a lot of the kind of doom and gloom and things like that. The mood is not very lighthearted at the moment in terms of Australian Counter-Strike discourse. It all started, which I'll lightly touch on. It's not in the headings, but basically a sprinkling of ESEA news coming out where Ian Smith went on the HLTV podcast. Sadly, our own HLTV writer Ash was not on that podcast, but
I'm gonna remain silent in this section.
Good call. But basically, look, he went on the show and there was a lot of interesting stuff that was brought up. A huge amount of it, obviously, because of the whole Hunden controversy. But AUCS did come up, and what did come up was that there were apparently 4 informal appeals that were made to ESEA. And out of those, one had already been approved, where that player had already received a lenient sentence. The other 3, however, were not approved, and he said that they were going to be denied. The problem is that allegedly, these players did not know that their appeals were going to be denied. They had not actually heard that, and basically heard that news live on a Twitch stream of a podcast, which is extremely rough. to say the least. If you want more details about all that kind of stuff, I highly recommend you go look over. Tham and Foggers both did in-depth videos of their experience with ESEA. Tham did it as a live stream. He's still got it in his Twitch VODs, and Foggers has it as this pinned tweet. If you want to hear more about the specifics of what's going on, probably nowhere better than the source. So go check those guys' videos out, because there's some very interesting stuff. But we've got a lot more interesting stuff to talk about in regards to where OC's been. So we've talked a lot about ESEA in the past, so probably a bit new stuff that we have to go into.
Not that next, that was the precursor, sort of how the world started to get bad when Harambe died. Not saying that is a comparison, but it feels like that was the first thing that happened, and then unrelated, this other stuff has just started to spew out. And I think walking through the timeline of the last week, we've essentially started with, I believe Rush B broke it first. They had a report come out about Direwolves, who have essentially couldn't come to a good renegotiation with their team regarding their contracts, which coming to an end, and so they've sort of just mutually they've done the Fast and the Furious and just sort of parted ways. So we found out about that when the report came out. This tweet from I'm not sure of his role at Direwolves, Taffy, the man from Direwolves, who said there would be an announcement of an announcement. Yeah,
that was their general manager from memory, their chief executive.
That's the one.
It's and look, the writing's been on the wall for a little bit, I think. Just the way that the scene has developed. In regards to Direwolves in general, yes, they were unable to negotiate an extension to the existing contract. By the sounds of things, Direwolves were looking to cut costs, as unfortunate as it was. Direwolves did say that they're looking into a developmental position. They'd love to be developing a Counter-Strike roster. That kind of is code for we want to look into a smaller roster and look to build them up.
But a cheaper roster is also implied with that.
Yes, indeed. I think that's exactly what they were trying to say. And yeah, it's just very poor timing for the lineup as well, who have been really building to this point, this RMR event coming up. They've really we've seen them take a series off Renegades. They're going toe to toe with Order, and I don't think that it's a big loss to the lineup. And if it's going to affect them heavily, I don't think so. But it's a blow nonetheless. It's a big blow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is as well with that is just the fact, as you touched on, the fact that this roster has been doing so well over the last year or so, however long you want to call it, where they have been kind of pushing this top 3 position in OS and have been pretty well challenging a lot of expectations, not quite reaching those Renegades Order levels, but still really showing quite a lot. And obviously having that organizational support behind them, it obviously all contributes when orgs throw their support behind teams, and whatever monetary ways they do, whether it's being able to pay the players, they can focus down on the game obviously, rather than having to deal with as much of the other stuff, and being able to support them with exposure and support them with resources, support them with connecting them to sponsors, and getting them out there. Big orgs like Direwolves really have a lot of pull in that regard. So the fact that this has come to be is just really kind of gutting. And obviously a precursor to the other things as well. But I think the good news, at least, is that the roster is sticking together, which is really good, because I think the 5 are still going to be very strong. But it's just going to be interesting to see how that shakeup goes.
Yeah, for sure. And you alluded to it. So fast forward a couple of days. Chiefs, similar sort of thing. Less of this, contract negotiations failing, sort of more of a Chiefs and the lineup coming to an understanding that Chiefs aren't willing to or able to support a Counter-Strike roster at this moment. And it's sort of developing. We've got tweet out there from Nick Bobber at the Chiefs saying, understand he's a bit ill at the moment, but when he sort of gets over that, there will be again another sort of more formal statement of video. But essentially, what we've heard from the players is they're sticking together. They want to compete. They're looking around, but unfortunately, Chiefs are just also not able to. And to some extent, given COVID, given ESEA, given the opportunity in OS, it's like a value for what their lineup was, just wasn't there. So there's an indefinite sort of hold on Chiefs in Counter-Strike at the moment, which is sad for such a legacy org. We've done so much content on them recently, in like the past couple of months talking about this legacy. But it's I shed a tear when I saw it. It's a bit disappointing.
I mean, these guys have been around since the beginning. Like we're talking exactly. before CS had any support in the region. These guys were out at it. And look, I think they're in a similar spot. They've left this game before. They've left the esport before, the Chiefs. I think they'll be back. I think it'll be some time before we see them back. And again, another blow for a lineup that is really starting to get on its feet. They've qualified for ESL ANZ tonight. We'll touch on that in a little bit for the second stage they've qualified for. But they've just been building this back up. They've picked up Maker recently. Blitz is on fire at the moment. Humongous, he's back. Everything's falling in place, and it's sad to see them lose the support. From what I understand, I reached out to Maker. They've had some interest with organizations. They're starting to begin talks with a couple of organizations. Nothing at all is set in stone yet. So it'll be interesting to think of who's willing to jump into Counter-Strike after two mammoth organizations take the step back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sort of, not quite on that same sort of legacy tier of, geez, we're just saying all the League of Legends teams.
Yeah.
We just said mammoth and anyway.
That was an accident, I swear.
Yeah. I'll quickly think of a Penta-related joke.
They're not picking the team up, by the way. Mammoth are not picking the team up. This is not confirmation. I'm not trying to...
But, sort of, what I'm alluding to is the next team, Paradox. They have also sort of had a separation with their CS team following 3 of their players retiring. Yeah, I don't know how much stock you put into retiring. You know how it is here. People retire, come back,
go to Valorant.
Yeah.
Etc.
But for the moment, at least, this squad has essentially disbanded, which I'm heartbroken about. I've been talking them up as a super underrated squad, and it just sort of looks like they never really hit their stride, and now we're never going to get to see. But yeah, Badonka, Zeph, and Luke, retiring for the time being. I say it like that. They have, that's what they have said. But I don't like to make a definite on that because I also want them to come back. I know their coach Zertz, who's done amazing work with the roster. I've spoken with him before. He's currently looking for a team. But yeah, otherwise, this is sort of the end of a roster that I thought had so much potential. Which again,
exactly.
It's a little more heartbreaking compared to the other two because at least they're sticking together for now. But maybe there were other sort of problems going on, or maybe if the orgs are pulling out, maybe the players feel the same way about opportunity in the region. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't spoken to them, but you can see why those connections can be made.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a shame to see, just because as you touched on, there was so much potential with that lineup. There were so many strong results that we saw constantly from Paradox, where it seemed like, they were just ever so close to being able to break into that real upper echelon. They were really one of those kind of pioneering teams in the way that they kind of went about how they played a lot of their CS and how they went about the team strategy and how they went through things. And they're a lineup that has stuck together for a fair bit of time as well, and with players that we've seen in this scene for quite a fair bit of time. So yeah, it's especially in a week like this, just having this news come out as well has been really disheartening because at least, as you said, with the other organizations leaving, or in the case of Direwolves, the players parting way with the organization, at the very least there, you do have the players sticking together, so you can at least have some semblance of, this is still like a thing that could happen. These players could go to this other organization, or, there's opportunities. There's plenty of orgs in OC who haven't stepped into the Counter-Strike realm, plenty of orgs that, if you're just looking at Counter-Strike, that you probably haven't really put too much stock into. So there's plenty of opportunity if some of these orgs did end up going towards Counter-Strike. It's just, the thing is that it comes down to, overall, with all of this kind of stuff happening, what it leads to a bigger question, really, of what is the future of AUCS looking like, particularly in org support, and particularly as far as players are concerned, because if the org support isn't there and the scene isn't there at that top end, are players going to want to stick around? In this Paradox case, there's a very strong possibility that this news was, and this is pure speculation, but that this news might have been brought forward sooner than it might have been planned to, or than it happened, because that possibility to, end up in a higher tier organization or something like that seems less likely now.
Yep. I think for me, it really comes back to what the orgs are getting out of their players. It's all well and good to say the opportunities aren't there, and that's true. COVID has definitely been a chief reason for the past year or two where things have been really much on the downturn. We've had far fewer events. Opportunities for teams to qualify overseas are getting cancelled anyway because of travel restrictions. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the organization's view, picking up the player is the investment on the part of the organization, right? They have to get something back out of the players. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm not a fan of seeing these like funny clips where players jump onto in front of a camera and try funny foods, that sort of thing. That's content, and that's going to, you can combine that with your sponsors. That's great stuff, and that's going to bring in a bit of money. But the players have also got to be invested in it as well. And if you just can't invest in the players and the players can't invest in the org, it's not going to work regardless of how strong the scene is around it. So we're looking at some organizations at the moment like Vertex and Renegades. They're putting out some interesting content, some intriguing content. People are engaging with it. And it's not particularly anything that's very high effort, if that makes sense. We're just seeing it's more the players' personalities speaking out more than the content is being directed. So it's really about finding a balance, but at the same time, it's about the players' expectations need to be lower, and the org's expectations also need to be a bit lower in regards to what they want out of their players. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
It's, I'll add this on. It's not all doom and gloom in the sense that there are orgs. Primarily, the one that comes to mind is Ground Zero, who have just re-entered Counter-Strike, a couple of weeks ago with the lineup that's a mix of, ex-Bizarre, ex-Riot, and all that. So, I think there's orgs sort of coming in and are happy to, if that balance is there, if those expectations are set at the right level, because I think compared to what you have to consider the viewership, you have to consider how many people are actually in this region watching stuff. And, they always say the bigger your brand, the more you can create the content. That's how you can generate more of this. And that's how everyone grows, right? Like, as much as everyone memed on Dick Stacey, he was very good at bringing eyeballs. Very, very good. And it's, if I have to think of who's the closest to that, maybe someone like Roffelco comes to mind, but he hasn't had this sort of big IEM Katowice sort of, cock and ball joke on the stage in an interview. So while the personalities are there, the visibility isn't. And it's incredibly hard to sort of break out. And whether you keep trying to go through with the personality aspect, or again, I'm going to come back to Fiend because I watch so many of his streams. He has his personality, but he also just does lots of Counter-Strike, coverage, watches demos, and sort of offers both ends of what the Counter-Strike community seems to like. Whereas, some people are a little more, not in a negative way, but one-dimensional when it comes to that. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, the thing is as well, though, is that, I feel like there is a lot of personality that comes through in a lot of these players. And it's a really good thing to see, more people and more showing up with this content and stuff like that. But I also feel at the same time, I've seen this talked about as well, is that there are some organizations and some people behind there who really expect a high level of professionalism from a lot of these players, particularly in organizations. A lot of players get really scared off doing the banter stuff and doing, the fun sort of shit that's like actually going to be interesting. Because the thing is, even when I see esports content a lot of the time from international orgs, and again, I'm very much paraphrasing a lot of the stuff I've seen on the timeline lately, right?
Yep.
Because it is, a very interesting conversation about where content in OC can go, and again, providing that organizational value. But the thing is that a lot of the content that does end up out there is very manufactured. It's the ideal kind of thing, like, this player tried playing Counter-Strike. We watched us play one of our Counter-Strike players against 4 silvers in matchmaking. Whoa, you'll never believe what happens. And just kind of feeling very restricted. Not like it's putting the players in a spot where it's like they get to show themselves as much, but rather a lot of that kind of stuff can just feel artificial at the same time. So it's about striking the right balance. And again, because of that whole professionalism thing that organizations often have, and you do have to have the right balance of that. But I think that where OC kind of shines in a way is some of that shit talking and some of that banter. Like, nothing completely, like, you can't go like off the deep end with it, but I feel like, again, because of the kind of environment, some players just get scared off it all completely and just stick to the very same sort of generic answers and interviews and, the same sort of like... I feel like that's also a factor at play when it comes to getting content out of players, is the content actually going to be interesting? Are people actually going to want to watch this? That sort of factor,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's interesting, like, all the different regions really lean into their shtick. Like, the Brazilian fan base is very passionate, and, you see that in sort of the hordes that they support their teams in. And, North America is a hive mind, and it's like they only have 2 thoughts. And, while we might only have 2 brain cells out here, we should embrace that and turn that into, I don't know. I'm just a guy.
Look, it's going to be the people like Fiend, the people like Gyra who are out on the streams, putting out continual amounts of any content. These are the guys that are going to be around next year and the year after, the guys that are going to be sticking through it, because that's what, at the end of the day, it's going to be about passion. Australian scene, the Oceanic scene, is never going to be this gigantic behemoth organization, like this massive region. It's never going to happen. That's the sheer fact of it. So it's really going to run off a lot of passion, especially in the next couple of months. And you know what? People like Fiend, people like Gyra, those are the people that are going to get us through to next year. And I'm looking forward to it as much as we're pretty mellow about it at the moment.
Yeah.
We want to see more of it happen from players, and we just want to see that kind of balance just at least be attempted, at least attempt something, So we'll see how we go with it. Yeah.
Can I just mention real quick as well, one organization, I think, and for the record, Josh Swift has not paid me to keep talking out of
Oh, God.
But I think that in terms of organizations that have been putting out some interesting content on their YouTube and video content, Order has definitely been there with their Counter-Strike squad. I've really enjoyed seeing like the I don't remember what they call the series, but basically where they play edited montages of a match's voice
the
comments.
mic up bit. I forget what they call it. Love that.
Exactly. Because the thing is about that is that because it's a players playing their match and stuff like that, and they're going to be shit talking and having fun, right? It is literally them at their most natural point of players just being themselves, which is something we exactly need to see in content. Yep. And we're seeing this kind of thing come out across a lot of platforms. I've seen Order be one of those first OC orgs. I haven't seen too many other organizations try it, but even just putting out TikTok content and trying a lot of different avenues to get content out. I'd really love to see even just that idea be stolen by some other organizations, because I think that's actually a really good idea, the mic'd up segment and that kind of stuff.
We saw how big it was. Cologne 2014, I want to say 2015 popped off when the players didn't like it. We know that. We know the coaches didn't like it because the teams are talking strategy, but they've made it work since. I think it was ESL Pro League and IEM Katowice last year might have done it, where it was all meme moments.
Yeah,
Just,
and well, at the org level, it's super easy to just message your in-game leader and say, "Hey, bro, can I like put this clip in?" And it's just Vex like screaming
absolutely.
Germany. It's like whatever.
Yeah,
absolutely.
At an org level, that's no problem because it's
Yep.
just people who's involved with the team anyway.
But just get something on the page, and it's not just the players as well. So it's on the orgs. Everyone's got to step up now. It's really important that everyone steps up for the future of the scene, because we've come too far. We've come too far to just let it all slide back, and I don't think it will. But nevertheless, it's something that we should avoid.
I agree.
Yeah.
I reckon they put. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's just all on that line of just trying to do more to kind of bring things back, because obviously this year has been pretty shit when it comes to a lot of things. There's been a lot of another point as well has just been this sort of impact that the ESEA bans have obviously had, for one, probably the biggest catalyst for this year to come alongside COVID. Because obviously with ESEA, a lot of the bookies shut their lines for AUCS, which led to a decreased viewership, which has led to organizations not being as interested to see us because, well, the stats on games just aren't as much anymore as well. And there's a lot of different things. But I think, again, content and just like trying, just different modes of engaging certainly are a start to try and bring things back. But a lot of people are also decrying this whole week as like the death of Australian Counter-Strike. It's not. There have been rougher periods for AUCS. There have been far worse times that we've been through and gone through with all that, and yet our scene is still here. We're still seeing events come up. We're still getting a lot more support overall from the top to the bottom down than we have seen prior. And we're still seeing a huge number of people competing in the amateur level as well, which feeds into all that. I think CGA, or LPLA, rather, I gotta not...
Come on,
I'm casting for them, I can't do that. Had, I think it was over 50 teams sign up in this upcoming season. And that's a lot of people who are still very interested in playing here in OCE, especially compared to years past. Like, this is a rough period. There is no going about that. But I think we'll be able to pull through, and I think that there's been far worse, and yet this scene continues to bounce back and continues to find ways to go through. So that's basically my bow on that.
We're nothing if not resilient. Absolutely right, mate.
No, exactly. I think that does put a very, very nice bow on it, because I'll be honest, I want to get our fingers stuck into some event talk, boys.
Yes.
Let's jump into the ESL ANZ Championships, which is ongoing. Sort of super quick overview of where we're at. Of course, if you're not already watching, what are we calling it, Taffy?
Check out the hub.
The hub. That's it.
Check out the hub.
It's excellent. But we'll do a quick recap of what's happened so far. So, as of recording, it's a Swiss stage. So win 3, you go through. Lose 3, you're going home. Direwolves Order already through 3-0. Pretty expected. Sorry, ex-Direwolves.
Yep.
And then we've got Vertex through alongside ex-Chiefs and ex-Paradox. We'll get to that. We will get to that. And then already out is Alki. I know we've practiced this beforehand, but I just forgot completely. And Fury, they're out after going 0-3. And we'll see, I think, 3 more teams go home this week. So, where are we heading first with this one?
Look, nothing too unexpected with the qualifiers so far. Direwolves and Order making short work of this Swiss stage. Vertex had the trip up against Chiefs, and look, that's a testament to how the lineup has been going. Blitz is having an absolute blinder at the moment. He's on top of the world right now, and he's really stepping up. Hugh, we've seen also. Maker is also, since his return, has been quite good as well for the lineup. Vertex, the slip up didn't cost them too much. They qualified through anyway, and as expected in the top 4. For Paradox in particular, though, we're going to keep our ear out for what's expected. Luther, you believe that it's going to be another team that will be given their qualifier spot, because tonight's win actually qualified them for stage 2. Yeah, for the double elimination. So we'll see where they're at. For the other lineups, Camo impressed me with the ever resilient PDG. He's still going. Peter Subas, he's carving up, and look, he's actually playing. He's been very strong as this anchor role he's been playing. I've been watching a few of their games on. I think they had the first opening match, I believe, was their win over Itswa He was just an anchor, an absolute anchor on that B site, and just locked it down. Eight ballers facing elimination. I don't think they'll have too much issue with Warriors. Sorry, what was their former team name?
BBB NBCBS.
Thank you, Ash.
Thank you.
Had to slide that one in.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
I think the big test is going to be for Ground Zero. We were kind of excited to see what this team could do with an org like Ground Zero backing them.
Yeah.
1 and 2, they face elimination against Bandits. That'll be on. That'll be next week. Oh no, sorry, that'll be the Wednesday game. That's the elimination match.
Yep.
This week. Other than that, I'm pretty. Everyone's pretty much where they're at the moment for ESL ANZ.
No, I completely agree. I think you basically just summed up all my thoughts, so I don't really have anything to add there. If I'm honest. Yeah.
One thing I will note is that obviously we don't know what's going to be happening because of the Paradox disband. It very well could be that the players could literally just play out until they get eliminated without scrimming. We haven't had any official rule. That being said, by the current standings, Dynasty Esports are at the highest point there because of the round difference, where they're going, so their rounds across their 4 games are 47 to 47, which is a round difference of 0 compared to Kanga, who's at -5, and Camo at -9. So if they were to use round difference to settle it, that could be a way. We might see some kind of matchup being played or something like that. Who knows?
They might just play out the Swiss and take the team that finishes 9th.
Yeah, that very well could be the case.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's unprecedented. I don't remember an ESL ANZ Champs at least having a team disband in the Swiss stage, given Swiss
we had a team eliminated last season, so they just forfeited all their games immediately.
I hope they don't go that route. I mean, it's going to be in the double elimination bracket. It might not be as impactful, but yeah, we may see a team get through and 2 other teams who finish on, say, 2 and 3 will miss out because of a round difference. We'll have to see. It's all time pending.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, there's still another round to be played, so it very well could be that the tie does, to some degree, get sorted, or things do get made easier after this incoming week's worth of matches, get all sorted out. We are still yet to see how things are going to wrap up in the final rounds, but look, ANZ Champs has been really interesting this season. Obviously, it's kind of the Premier League where that's where the most exciting OC competition comes out. Obviously, again, that competition with the highest production value and everything going into it. If you want any indication of where the state of AUCS can be and when there's big production behind it and a lot of exciting stuff, go tune into the ANZ Champs stream every week because it's there.
Yep,
it's
100%.
Really fun to watch.
Yep. Excellent.
Any more thoughts on that? Because we ripped through that, to be honest.
We ripped through that. That was good.
Yeah.
Let's head into Premier. I think that's sort of the next in line. And Premier is one of those ones where it's really tough to cover because every season teams piss off and all kinds of things happen. But for the most part, it's always like the teams that should win, and all that. So where do we want to start with Premier? Do we want to start on the fact that Paradox, similar to ANZ Champs, we're not really sure what's going to happen outside of. It looks like they've just forfeited all their games actually.
Yep.
So we know what's going to happen. They're the first team out of this season.
Yep. Outside of that, I don't see too many surprises so far. Vertex obviously getting the win over Renegades. That was from the forfeit back in week 1. It's completely unsurprising to me that they're currently on top of the group. It was them and Renegades in my mind that were going to be the top 2. Outside of that, Group B, we see X Direwolves and Order on top as well. Great start from the Warriors, 2-1. It's important in this middle, this kind of sort of the mid-range battle between these other teams that are all vying to make that top 4. Look, starting your season early, starting strong is obviously going to be a big factor. I'm pretty sure there's not much. I guess it's just that it's early on. It's very early on in the season. We've already lost one team. That's par for the course when it comes to Premier sometimes. But outside of that, we'll be keeping an eye on it. We'll seeing where the teams end up.
The real interesting stuff is going to be when we get to those playoffs, because then we'll be able to see those top teams from both of the groups be able to duke it out. Obviously, having ex Chiefs, ex Direwolves, as well as Vertex Renegades Order, probably towards that top end of things. I would imagine where we'd see a lot of stuff come out. Paradox forfeiting is, well, look, again, the whole Paradox situation, very unfortunate, because I was very keen to see how they'd go in this season, both ANZ Champs and in Premier, of course. I think it's going to be rather interesting as well, just to see how, when playoffs come through, how things are going to go there. Just the biggest thing for Premier overall has been the problem of match coverage, which I think has been the biggest thing about it, and that continues to be a bit of an issue with the fact that realistically Jose is the only one who's been hopping on every single game like a madman, the absolute legend he is. But look, you never know. Might see some more casts coming through from yours truly. I want to hop on some ESEA Premier as well, so quick cheeky plug, twitch.tv/2sbs.
Get in there.
You might see.
It's September. It's September. Everyone
that's
jump
true.
in.
It is.
Come
I
on.
got a stream, man.
Plug that, mate.
Yeah, no, but would absolutely not be surprised if we get some of the Roundup crew on for a fun duo cast or something like that.
He said it now. We're committed.
Yeah, yep. Exactly. I've said it, so it's got to happen. Yeah, it's going to be a real interesting time. So very keen.
Excellent. I'm going to let you guys keep carrying while I chase some stuff up that I'm investigating.
Okay.
Let's jump into the DreamHack Open qualifiers, which, Jesus, if you were watching the first day, were a bit of a... Whew, some would say sheesh, because it was a bit of a mess, man.
Bit of a nightmare. Actually, Ash, real quickly, do you want to talk about the situation with what was the Chinese team that had managed to sneak into the qualifier? Had you caught up with that?
They had a very silly name. It was cat related, wasn't it? Anyway, what happened? So somehow it took a very long time for admins to... I don't know what happened. I'm not accusing anyone of anything.
I found it here. It was Cat Evil. Cat Evil
were truly pure evil. Because they got through like a majority of this qualifier bracket, and then when they got to like the semi-final, just before the final at the end of the day one qualifier, turns out they all just live in China and aren't from this region, and therefore are ineligible to play in our qualifier for the ANZ portion.
Yeah, it's so. Look, I'm hoping it's just a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I'm sure there was. From what I understand, the people running the qualifier are separate to DreamHack. I don't know who they are, but I know that they're separate. And this is happening at 12:30 the other night. Was it last night or the night before?
Night before, I think. Yeah.
And they had to replay the last two BO1s, that part of the bracket, because they had to play the final ASAP the next morning, because they had to play the Open Qual 2.
Yes, that's right.
It was...
rough. Yeah, the losing team of that final would have wanted to go through the Open Qualifier 2 to at least have a second crack. I'm just looking back at the bracket now. It's funny that it happened. They went back to the round of 32, I want to say, where Cat Evil defeated Miracle Run, who were then given the forfeit win, and then went on their own Miracle Run to make it to the grand final of the Open bracket, where they did go down to Rooster in the very end. That was 2-0 in that final. And then today's second round, we saw the ex-Chiefs make it through. LOL 1-2-3 is how they'll be represented going forward. They got the win up tonight over Wen. That was a 2-1 victory. 2-0 victory. So they're through to the closed qualifier for DreamHack Open 46.
Truly, when did we ask though?
I love the open qualifier names teams come up with. It's just so fun.
It's part of the branding. It's part of the region.
Exactly.
It's you have it in each region, but yeah, you get some great names. And look, everyone's having a bit of fun, which is what you want to see. But with ex-Chiefs now, LOL 1-2-3 and Rooster through to the closed qualifier. Shout out to Miracle Run. They gave it their best.
Yeah, almost had a miracle run on their hands there, but almost. But yeah, no, very interesting to see a lot of the community streams coming out as well for the Open Qualifiers, which has been really great to see a lot of
players too.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the games were open IP. So, look, I was just looking like last night and before that, and just seeing players like Apoc Dud, Vexite, hopping on, and between playing their Instafrag games, hopping in open IP and just having a bit of fun, kind of casting it and just watching the game with their stream. Like, it's just been really fun also seeing players hop on this, which I think also is, it's a really good point for open IP games, especially in qualifiers. It's really nice to see. And I really hope as well that, as far as going back to Premier coverage, I would really love to see if some of these players and things like that could get access to some of these games, because no one's casting them. And there's just as much content to come out because of all of this as well. So I would love to see more open IP stuff and more content around that, because seeing players just jump on and just watch, teams in the qualifiers where they're already out of it or already qualified through, has just been so fun.
Yep. 100% agree. Yep.
But yeah, that's basically been the qualifiers for DreamHack Open, which we'll touch more on the main event rather shortly. But unless no one has anything more on that, I think we can move ahead to our next segment. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
I think we're done domestically, right? And we're going to travel
at least
abroad.
For now. Yeah.
At least for now. Event-wise. That's it. This show is done with domestic Counter-Strike. We only... we're
going to become another HLTV confirmed clone.
No problem.
1/3 of the way there.
They're onto me, guys. So EPL is going on at the moment. Group D just finished. The final group, obviously, a bit of heartbreak for us with Renegades not being able to make it. Due to travel complications. So that sucked. Force replaced them. I think they're through. But in terms of the Aussie representation that we still have there at the moment, Complexity and Mouse Sports have managed to get out of their groups. They were in, I should know this off the top of my head, Group B, Complexity got through.
Yep.
Pretty impressive. That was the group where G2 absolutely shat the bed.
Yeah. I had no words watching that. I stayed up for Group B because I wanted to see Juz. Most of the G2 games were up first for our viewers, our time slot. And yeah, look, I got no words. They come off the back of a great offline run at Cologne and go into this, and yeah, really, it was a big shock to see them just completely bail out of the group.
Yeah, but good for Complexity, because if you put G2 up the top and punch everyone down one, they wouldn't have gotten through otherwise. So,
yes.
I guess the silver lining there. In terms of Complexity, it's the same problems we always talk about. It just feels like, I don't know who sold their soul to the devil. Maybe Jason Lake did. But this team is just so unfortunate with, Config standing out for the time being and Nato Safix stepping in. It just hurts to see my boy.
I'm telling you, it's a Dallas Cowboys thing, man. I told you the connection is there. I'm making it happen. I'm like the guy with the whiteboard and the red lines, making the connections. I'm like, it's happening. This is why it's happened. Yeah, look, it's Juzzy's stepped up, in my opinion. He's really stepped up in the place to try and fill the gap. Nato Safik, he's been there. Obviously, with Poison in the lineup, he's going to be the primary AWPer. So we don't get to see Nato really on his prime, in his groove, I guess, is where I'm going. But nevertheless, they're through. It's a tough road ahead of them, to say the least. They're against Vitality, who have really hit their stride again. They're really the roller coaster team of Tier 1 CS at the moment. One event they'll be out in groups and they'll be off home early. The next event they're really pushing hard for playoffs. So I don't envy the winner of that match because they play Gambit.
Yeah,
I think we'll just 2-0 them.
They've really got their work cut out for them, because it's like, sure, even if you sort of manage to overcome Vitality, straight into a Gambit game, that's rough.
Yeah,
with the standing,
be in that position
with the standing. That's right.
So
that's right. So good luck to them for sure.
100%.
Yeah, fingers crossed we can see some more stuff. But yeah, as you said, look, a lot of it just being very similar stuff we always talk about with complexity. But really hoping that we can, with these shuffling around of things and, at least something coming through, like maybe we'll be able to find something that'll get this roster to work at their full potential. But yeah, is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think with Config back, once they get him back and they can get a really strong boot camp ahead of the major, assuming they qualify, I think they're, I'll check it a bit later, but assuming they make it to the major, if they can get a really strong boot camp, I'm picking them for top 4. I think they'll make top 4 at the major. If they can just get into the server, get a boot camp and not have any bad luck where someone breaks their wrist or gets COVID and is stuck for 2 weeks, anything, just give them a shot because they will blow your socks off, honestly.
I agree. We'll skirt over to Group C, where Mouse Sports, miracle run was said a lot in the last, couple minutes, but this was impressive. Down bad, 0-2, managed to run it back into a 3-way tie with Fnatic and FaZe for 3-2 in score. And they end up finishing second in their group on round differential as a result.
By one round.
Absolutely mental stuff. But, it's... Mouse Sports have been... This is sort of what we said back when they won Flashpoint, right? It's going to be how high are the peaks, how low are the troughs.
Yep.
And... they had a disappointing showing at Cologne. We've had a player break, so it's really hard to measure what we can expect coming off of this. But I somehow didn't get to watch a lot of the Mouse Sports games. I mainly watched all of the FaZe and Evil Geniuses sort of games, just because those were the ones I ended up covering.
Yep.
So I didn't actually get to see a lot of them in the server. But, reading the match reports and sort of after the fact and all that, just I'm impressed that they did what they did, and that was such a weird group in terms of the tiebreaker. So sad to see FaZe Clan go out, but I don't care as long as they're there.
Yeah, absolutely got to be there for the OC players above anything else. I'm pretty sure that's the camp where if you're listening to this podcast, that's got to be you at this point. But yeah, look, again, it's been really interesting to see, especially how Dexter has fit in with Mouse Sports thus far. As you said, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. But I still see there definitely being, even if the highs and lows are there, at least there seem to be higher highs and higher lows in a way. Where I think there is being progress made. Every team kind of has these sort of setbacks. And I'm still at the point, and I think, majority would agree with this, is that I think the true potential of rosters doesn't really come out in online CS, especially in this kind of environment. I think we would be seeing a very different landscape as far as international Counter-Strike is concerned if COVID didn't happen and we were all on LAN still. And just a side note, it is really so unfortunate to see this event being played online after having witnessed IEM Cologne, which is such an incredible event, and because it was a LAN event. So fingers crossed we get to see some more of these teams playing on LAN, and that we get to see Mouse Sports still putting up some performances. But yeah, God, absolutely, what a fucking run. That is insane.
Well, in terms of Mouse moving forward,
0-2.
In the playoffs, they've matched up into NIP first, which is going to be really interesting because the head-to-head suggests that it can really go either way. And, they were the ones who knocked them out of Cologne, I believe. But before that, they obviously beat NIP to win Flashpoint. And there was another series in there at an event. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But they beat them there as well. So I'm not going to say there's a rivalry between these two teams, but they're definitely feel like it could go either way. And I guess we'll see on the day, but they'll eventually, should they beat NIP, they go into OG. And should they beat OG, if I'm reading the bracket correctly, that is, I see them beating OG, to be honest. But it's again, they're on that Gambit side of the bracket, and not to say that that's the worst side, because if you're on the top, you'll eventually have to play Na'Vi. So,
yeah, look, I think OG is a very winnable match. Like as you said, look, if they can make the semi-finals, I think that's a tick, that's a check mark that they can mark off, because I think that'll be a sound achievement for them. In terms of the tournament, who do you think's taking it, real quick?
I think I've got based on my fantasy, which everyone should check out. Get in the Snowball Discord, please. Get into the Counter-Strike channel and come play fantasy pick'ems with us.
I've got to do mine still,
HLTV fantasy, mind you.
Yeah. But
I've got a lot for HLTV recently from you guys.
I don't know why. Eh?
Weird, right?
Kind of weird. Yeah. I've got Dexter in there because you got to believe. But I've got some cheap players because I've got Simple, and I believe Navi will be winning this.
Yeah, I'm with you. Navi to win it.
Yeah, no, I also agree. Navi are looking in absolutely fantastic form at the moment. I think that'll be what we see. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Well, I think that puts I don't have another thing to say other than that puts a bow on it. So I'll have to brainstorm.
Reuse that one.
I'm just going to reuse. I'm just going to copy and paste that one in again.
All about recycling.
We're going to move into some sort of what's coming up in the future. What the immediate landscape is going to look like in this region in terms of events, at least. And we'll jump into DreamHack Open, OCE 2021, and someone take the steering wheel on this.
Well, it's a big event, 16 grand up for grabs for the winning team, and then obviously an invite to the EPT event, which, well, let's assume at the moment that's not going to happen. But nevertheless, quite a big prize pool. We've got X-Star Wolves and Renegades invited to the main event. And then in the closed qualifier, it's Vertex and Order, the two invites, which was interesting. It obviously, to me, seems like they've opened up the HLTV rankings for the Oceanic region and gone, yep, top two are through, the next top two are into the closed qualifier. That makes sense. So, yeah, look, at the end of the day, I do think that'll be the 4 teams through to the main event. I would like to see Vertex against LOL 123 X Chiefs, though. That would be, I think that would be my match to watch for the closed qualifier, which I believe should be beginning on 14th of September.
Yep, that's right.
So that is going to be next Tuesday night. So keep an ear out for that one. So in my opinion, look, Renegades are going to be tough to stop. We've shown, every time I question them, in that they spend a majority of the time between events doing anything other than CS, obviously trying to keep their mind away from all of it at one time, and also trying to stay out of the OCE competition loop. But every time that happens, I question them. I see if anyone can step up. No one is able to on a consistent level, and they just absolutely decimate everyone. So, look, Renegades, I think, may take the event. I think the more interesting battle will be who joins them in the main event itself.
I agree.
Yeah. No, I think the thing is that obviously Renegades still that kind of tier above everyone else. That just seems to be, like, I think every single episode of this podcast, we mentioned that fact at some point, because that's just how it is in OS. Renegades are just too good at what they do here and just crush the competition. And that's just the way things are. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see those matches, as you said. I'm particularly keen to see what Rooster are able to do, because they're a lineup that realistically we mostly see in LPL. We don't see them in ANZ Champs. We don't see them. I'm pretty sure we're not really seeing them as much in Premier. Correct me if I'm wrong. Largely seeing them towards LPL Pro. Actually, did they play Premier? I'm
double-checking now.
Genuinely, yeah, I say that. I said that, but then I'm like actually unsure. Okay, but like, still one of these teams that we don't see as much, and they're absolutely cracked. Like, there are some really good players there. Danny G, Chelios, really strong aimers who have just been able to absolutely show time and time again highlight plays and just really come up. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they go in this closed qualifier, because even if they do get knocked down by Order or Vertex, who I think we're all thinking it's going to be those teams going through to the main event, I still think it'll be one hell of a show. So I'm really keen to see how this close qualifier goes. Also, the former Chiefs lineup, again, really strong roster, really amazing stuff we've been able to see from them as well. I realistically think that we could see some close results here, particularly depending on how the seedings go. We don't know what the matchups are yet, but Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I think the fact that we're even just seeing another big like a DreamHack event here with another prize pool and just something that's shorter term. Realistically, in OC, we haven't really been seeing as much of like these shorter form tournaments in the last year. We've had some, especially including the RMRs, but I think it's really something that it's just really good to see come through because it's a break from just long format leagues. It's something a bit shorter, a bit, more interesting in that regard.
Yeah.
Yep. Indeed.
I think while we can talk about these teams, we're going to talk about these teams again in a second. So we're just going to jump to the next event, which is the RMR, which is IM Fall.
The big one.
And it's, this pretty much is, we were brainstorming the math in terms of, who can actually qualify based on the RMR points because, the way it's all set out before the thing even begins. And this counts as the third RMR event. So there's like X amount of points, blah, 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 blah. We did the math, folks. And there's a couple of sort of outcomes here, but the way everything's been seeded is there's the sort of the main event, and Renegades and Order are automatically qualified as they are 1 and 2 on RMR points, and then 2 teams will join them through a closed qual. Then the next 2 teams in terms of RMR points, which is X-Direwolves and Rooster, are sitting in that closed qual already, who will be joined by 2 teams from the open qual. So as you can see, this sort of parallels to this this other event that we were just talking about. And I think we're going to end up with a very similar field, but it's going to be interesting to see whether teams like Vertex and Chiefs give it a shot, because it's very, very, very unlikely any of them are going to qualify for the major. It's going to be more about, there's going to be these freak scenarios where Order and X-Direwolves can potentially qualify, or at least stop like Renegades from qualifying. Otherwise, unless Renegades go out immediately, I think it was Taff, they need to go fourth. Order needs to come second.
It's
third, and that's how Direwolves can win.
Yeah, the big benefit of it is that there's only points given to the top 2. So mathematically, any team can still qualify for the major with just this one event. However, if Renegades make the final, they're 100% through. If Order make the final and Renegades don't, they're 100% through. If Direwolves make the final and the top 2 don't, they're 100% through. So the gap of the points is just a bit too high there. Yeah. But at least the top 4 aren't all scoring points, because if that was the case, this is over. Renegades have received the invite. They would have received enough points. So, hey, one freak day, one absolute big upset in the main event could see Renegades miss out on the major, and we it's a very minute chance, but we could see another team just swoop on in and steal a spot, even away from Order. So that it'll be something to watch. Definitely,
it feels like an episode of Old School talking about my generation, where like the last round is worth 10 billion points, so anyone can one thing that's interesting on that is, if any other org, Renegades we know can do this. Order we haven't seen, but probably could. But if any other org other than these 2 qualify, there is this sort of question mark about whether they can physically get there, considering COVID restrictions and the financial sort of situation around and the logistics around going overseas at the moment. I don't see X-Direwolves being able to. I don't see Rooster being able to actually do that. You know what I mean?
Yes, and especially with Direwolves dropping their players as well.
Yeah, so even if one of these freak scenarios happens, I don't know. In one school of thought, it's probably best Renegades or Order win. But even then, it's probably best Renegades win if you think about it from that aspect, trying to minimize the risk of us missing out of the major. Does you know what I mean? That's sort of a
I hadn't considered it from the org standpoint, with the fact that the orgs had dropped the teams. Like, how are they actually going to financially support the fact that they will have to sit through a quarantine, coming home? Like, it could be a 3-month venture. They might have to stay in Europe for an extended period, and Renegades and Order have the resources to do that. But these teams that no longer have the org support don't, and it's already going to be hard enough. We're looking at a 3-week turnaround from the end of the IM Fall to the start of the Stockholm Major. That is a very tight window. Like, these teams need to have everything's sorted. Even if they're not going to make the major, they need to be ready to fly. If just in the off chance that Renegades has a rough day and they qualify ahead, because otherwise we're going to see even less Oceanic representation at the major.
Yeah, especially on that note as well. So I don't think it's been talked about very widely, but obviously, so everyone knows that Renegades didn't make it to ESL Pro League, and that's because for those who haven't really been following the news as much, there is currently a ban on outgoing travel in Australia. That is just something that the government here is doing. There are only certain reasons for exemption, pretty much, to leave the country. I think their thought process behind it is something along the lines of, we don't want people going overseas, getting COVID, bringing it back within short periods of time because they wanted to holiday.
Well, it's also like there's other people waiting to get back overseas, and it's by the government's logic, it's unfair that Renegades leave, come back before other people even get the chance. So, it's just a political thing, whatever.
Yeah, but we saw the same thing happen with the team in R6 as well, not being able to make the R6 major, and we've seen that with Renegades in ESL Pro League. But I will note that there is one specific exemption which could apply if Renegades or Order. I'm assuming Renegades, so I'm just going to say Renegades from here, but either case, which is that basically if you want to be able to leave, you can, so long as your return flight is at least 3 months away. Now, I could see Renegades actually doing that and using that time to not only be there for the major, but then also being able to turn it into an EU bootcamp. There was a tweet a couple weeks back from Hats replying to a journalist at Dust 2, MNMZZZ, or Jeff there. That's his alias. I'm just going to, however you say it. Basically, he said... the fact that something, this is also ignoring the fact that a team like Renegades might not be able to attend it all if they can't return to Australia after the event. Unless the situation greatly improves, they might have to drop out, much like they did for ESL Pro League. Hats actually replied to that tweet saying that they decided to drop it because of the RMR, and if they qualify, they said, if we qualify, I think we'd cop it for the major, obviously referring to not being able to return to Australia. So, look, Renegades are seriously, at least by that sound, so far invested in terms of wanting to get to this major that they will cop that. And it seems they've got the organizational support to be able to, even if, in all honesty, that plan does... shit, that sounds reckless. But I get it, because these are some absolutely passionate players who have not been able to get overseas in a while, and there hasn't been a major in so long. So...
100%.
Look, I hope that we can see some OC representation at a major, because it's been so long since we've had a major and had this whole big thing happening in CS that the CS scene overall just doesn't feel the same without majors. I'm really looking forward to this one for that reason, and I really want to see some OC though.
Yeah. And there's a good chance we'll be covering the major a lot. So
big time.
Keep an eye out, because I think everyone's very excited. So.
Got to remember, we will have one other team at the major, and that is going to be Extremum. They are currently top of the NA RMR standings, and as long as I believe they finish, I think, top 5, they physically, by the standings, will not be able to miss out on that. They'll at least be in the contenders if they finish 5th at the next RMR event. Even if they miss the finals, there's, depending on the teams that qualify, they could still end up at the major. Like, it's very highly likely that they're there in some way. So, look, we'll have at least one team to barrack for.
Yeah, and that's also not even counting that we'll likely see Mouse Sports and Complexity, who have OS players as well. So there definitely will be some OC representation at the major, but again, the more the merrier, especially when it's a team that has been playing in Australia getting to go.
Worst case scenario, I'm sure Chad will be casting. So
absolutely,
we've got that going for us at least.
MC might be observing. I don't know.
Yeah. Probably.
Plenty of opportunities. But I think that we'll copy and paste it again. I think that puts a bow on it.
Hate it.
We'll come up with something better next time.
Hard cut there. But of course, we've I don't know, promise is a strong word, but we're going to try and get that RMR special out for everybody to enjoy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
but
definitely.
I'm gonna do something funny. I'm gonna put Taffy on the spot, and you're gonna close the show out.
All right. Well, that was sudden. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, the scene is not dead. Don't worry, it won't ever die. Thanks to Blue Microphones for sponsoring the podcast, and thanks again to our regular scheduled hosts of Schlebo at Schlebo Ashmeister and Luther at It's Tuesdays 2SBS. I've been Taffy, thank you. And yes, tune in, stay tuned for our big RMR special. We will be getting that shortly. Have a good night.